All right, hard yarners. We are joined by the ever delightful Corey White and the even more delightful, and now that we know, is a rapper, Robbie Tedeschi. Fucking incredible episode. Firstly, before we get into what we talked about, this episode is brought to you by Raunchy Brewing Co., the beer that actually tastes good. It really does. I actually enjoy it. I'm not even just saying that. I get it at ECC on tap, and it's available at a few pubs now on tap. So I definitely recommend it. There's a stout that I really like as well. So there's a link in our bio that you can get on and that you can order online because that's probably the easiest way. And they make the most money out of it. So hit up raunchibrewingco.com, I think it is. And I should know that better considering they're sponsors. And secondly, alltradescover.com.au, as you can see behind our lovely friend there, Corey White. They are a trade insurance company that give you trade insurance for anything that's going to go wrong on site, your liability insurance and fucking things up. So Delby can definitely probably get something like that because he can't even hang a picture without, hurting his back or something like that. So
good way of getting out, having to do that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But alltradescover.com.au for all of your insurance needs, especially for for smaller tradies, they're going to benefit pretty well from that. So hit them up. But we were joined by Corey and Robbie, and we had a great discussion on so many things, especially towards the end. We had a deep chat about Julian Assange. But lads, what do we chat about today?
All sorts of things. Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act, yes. Roger Cook's backflip, The Voice, Ukraine, vaccine hangovers.
The decay of institutions, but their need to remain hopeful because hopelessness is not an antidote to...
Yes, I did say that it does feel hopeless at the end of this podcast, but
and I had something poignant to counteract it, but then I forgot it, like when I was midway through a sentence, and I'm sorry, hard yarners.
Do you remember what it was?
No.
Well,
this is why I'm giving up drinking.
Well, it's
just kidding. I'm not giving it up. I'm just having a brain.
It's you guys when you come on, it's always a very good episode. So that was great. Delby's obviously doing well in Edinburgh. So if you're in Edinburgh, and we do have a few listeners over there, or in the UK that are travelling over to there, go hit up Delby, Cam McLaren. We've got Andy Roach and Tom and Kyle Legacy. I was going to say Tom Legacy and Kyle Legacy over there doing some stuff. So get over there and support the lads as well while they're doing their thing. But aside from that, thank you very much, guys. Fucking awesome episode. Insightful, poignant, controversial.
Pleasure, mate. Usual. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks, mate.
Let's get hard.
Welcome to Hard Yarns Podcast.
I am fucking fat.
Anything Chris White says, please disregard it.
5D is actually a state of being. It's a unity consciousness.
That was Hard Yarns with me, Frankie Rosso. I'm going to throw it over to your co-host,
Daniel Delby.
And Cameron Brand.
I would do this and then I'd gong.
Free in attendance for the millions listening at home. Let's get hard.
Sick. All right. How's everyone feeling? Good?
Yeah, real good. Thanks for having us back.
Fuck yeah. Make sure that's nice and close there, Robbie. You can move it closer to you. Like it's.
Oh yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
Beautiful.
I love it. How good. How we going, guys? How we go? It's been a while. I think last time Delby was away. We had both of us. So
yeah,
things going well.
Yeah, no, it's been good, mate. Obviously, the winter's been a little bit cold and dark and lonely, but it's been good. Gigs are fun.
Yeah. Oh, and thanks so much for the last minute little opening spot. You were there as well, Robbie. That was good.
That was a good night.
Yeah, and I said this to you as well. I think the next week. It was great because it actually felt it was awesome being in a room of people that felt the same and had the same sort of ideas that we have. But I think I didn't like, and this don't take this as a like being rude, but I didn't like it as much as when I watch you at like a a neutral venue.
It's way more fun to watch me at a venue where it's like not my audience, where it's like people who don't know what they're getting, and they're, you know, like
100%.
watching people's reactions.
Yeah, I
during my
love.
set is probably the best thing, and lots of comedians say that to me, you know. And
Seeing
I've
the
often
room
thought-
split too.
Yeah. So I love watching you wrestle the room over and convince the people that really don't like you and make them watch.
Look, I do have a lot of fun in doing that. And
Yeah.
I do it two ways, whether, you know, I go out and win them over first and then hit them, or then hit them first and then win them over with the tyranny of wit and charm. But
Yeah.
it doesn't work 10 times out of 10. So you can't win them back. But
I have seen it a couple of times where I'm like, oh fuck, he's they're not buying in. It's hard, like at a show like the Gong or something like that, where you've got a few minutes, you've got a minute to win them over, and if you haven't,
I just love the combative element of the Gong. Well, that's my favourite part of it. But yeah, you know what's fun about that show, You Can't Chew Branchy, was the diversity of people in the room. You know, like there was guys from the army, there was coppers, some judicial officers, a couple of convicted crooks, and, you know, just average day, everyday punters, you know. It was a broad church.
Yeah, no, it was great. I had a great time. Fabian did well as well. It was a great night.
I got a lot of love for Fabian. He's very funny.
Good to see all the people at Wanneroo turning up. Would you reckon most of them were from Wanneroo? It's a great venue, Comedy Shack.
Yeah, I do love that tent. It was a bit weird though, going from 2,500 people at the convention centre to a fucking tent in Wanneroo. So come back to earth pretty quickly.
Actually, I don't know if you've been on since that happened.
No.
Awesome. So let's talk about that, because you get to speak, like, I guess, warm up the room for Dr. Asim Malhotra. Me and Robbie were in the crowd, sitting there, little besties, talking to some interesting folk in the crowd.
Yeah, it was. That was also a broad church of people, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was so nice, because then I could see they didn't dim the lights on the crowd when I walked out.
Yeah.
And I could see you boys and a bunch of other people I knew, and Robbie was sitting next to a Liberal senator who's asked him to like stop moving his leg or something.
Yeah, I was tapping my fucking leg. I had a bit of a cry about it. I was like, didn't know who he was though. So
Could you stop moving your leg? Jesus Christ. What do they call that? Restless leg syndrome or whatever. Is that when you're anticipation though?
I don't know. I think it's just one of those things. Like you just do it sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a long time to sit still.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
3 hours. So
Yeah.
Fair to say, I probably have some more legitimate complaints I can send his way as a member of parliament.
Well, speaking of
Me
that,
tapping my leg.
I was reading in the paper this morning, because they're talking about the abortion laws that he's going to scrutinise, and when the surrogacy laws came through, he spoke against them for 22 hours in the Senate.
Jesus.
22 hours.
Look, I don't know. I have some sympathy for criticisms of surrogacy. Like, it's a pretty fraught field. There's lots of ethical considerations that come up with surrogacy. I suppose it depends what your angle is. You know, if you're against surrogacy because you don't want to see, you know, like same-sex people have kids or something like that, and that's the agenda you're coming from, as opposed to, you know, like exploitation of vulnerable people in you know, desperate situations, then I'm far more sympathetic to people trying to protect vulnerable people, as opposed to, you know, if you've got like a hardcore political agenda that's, you know, sort of douchey.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of agendas floating around at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
It seems to me, you mentioned this last time, and a few people have mentioned this, that pendulum is swinging, and the cultural shift, which is what we called our last episode with you, is swinging, and it's changing, and I'm seeing so many more people just push back against these, I will call them that, extremist views, and they're pushing too much in people's faces, and they're pushing back. And it's good. It's beautiful to see.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I kind of think that people are going right out of spite.
Yeah.
In a way. They're just so sick of this saturation of the culture with these ideas that are very toxic, let's be honest. I mean, it's the last of the terrible things we import from America. First it was the fast food and the culture and the politics and the journalism, and now the last export as a dying empire is their toxic ideas as a culture. Yeah. And look what it's doing. But I think there is a backlash, and I'm glad there is, because the longer it sits unsaid and unexpressed, the more toxic it becomes. I think Nietzsche's got that quote, all truths that remain silent eventually become poisonous. And in some quarters it is becoming poisonous, I think. But we'll see how far it shifts. My fear is that it coincides with an economic crisis, and then you get these little failed artists with facial hair running around.
Of course, the other worst thing that we've imported from America is the submarines. That we get in 34 years. They're trying to big it up on Channel 7 News the other day, showing what machines they are and how great they are.
Oh, and it's going to be like, the Joint Strike Fighter, just an utter waste of Commonwealth money. And then I saw Four Corners on Monday night, with the rorts that KPMG and all the other consultancy firms who have been up to with stripping the taxpayer of billions of dollars, been overcharging and et cetera, et cetera.
What's that with? I haven't seen that.
So the four big consultancy firms, PricewaterhouseCoopers was the one who was in trouble a couple of weeks ago for sharing confidential tax advice with their clients to avoid tax because they work for the government. It's a way of outsourcing the public, the bureaucracy, and government work that's not subject to freedom of information and disclosure requirements, etc. So, surprise, surprise, everything's corrupt in this country. From the chief prosecutor in the ACT, from KPMG, PwC, EY, it's just all our institutions are rotten to the core, and people have lost faith in all of our institutions on every level, from the media to politics to the bureaucracy, to the corporate class. I mean,
you can see it in the States at the moment with their polling for the election. Trump is big. He's getting more support with the more indictments they give him, because it's like everyone can see it now. Everyone can see the tactics. Everyone can see that it's just a diversion and a distraction from their own guilty and corrupt ways that they've been living with. So, if we keep seeing this like a weaponized DOJ at the moment, which is clearly the Biden administration, and I won't say Biden because Biden doesn't know what the fuck's going on. It is the Biden administration is using their own DOJ to try and eliminate their chief political opposition. Like that, if that is not like what we see in a third world country.
Well, worse than that, it's the intelligence agency as well. They're all up to their necks in it. And you know what annoys me is that they know that the effect of using the institutions and the law to go after a defeated political opponent creates sympathy for them, and it also creates polarization in the polity. So you wonder how much of it's by default or by design.
Yeah.
Is it incompetence or is it intent?
I definitely don't think it's incompetence. You can't be that incompetent.
I mean, at this
I
point,
don't know, man. I reckon it shows that they haven't learned the lessons from the previous election where he ran as an establishment outsider, and by marshalling all the forces of the establishment against him, they're basically bolstering that narrative again. The only way they've really changed their tactics was I think they tried to get him or to interfere with the Republican National Convention last time because they thought Hillary would beat him.
Yes.
Now they're doing the opposite. They're trying to knock him out as soon as possible. So I don't think they've learned any of the lessons really. It's just and the Trump campaign's a reboot of the original Make America Great Again. You know, I cringe when I watch it, but it's also hilarious entertainment.
100%. And I wholeheartedly admit that I was very biased towards the Trump side because I was one of those people who bought into the Obama stuff. I thought we'd won. We'd finally...
Change we can believe in.
Exactly. And I fell for it.
Making me hesitant to go all in about RFK.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, is this the last great trick that the establishment plays on us, you know?
Give us one of them.
Because that's the hope and change I could believe in, and it's seductive. It's and especially it's intoxicating to feel like you're on the right side of a historical shift and movement.
It is it's starting to become very predictable. The whole everything they were watching for example the indictments. Like I didn't say it was going to be an indictment, but even I tweeted the day Devon Archer made his testimony against Hunter Biden and the Bidens. And the bribery and the corruption that's going on there. The day that happened, I tweeted, something along the lines of, we're going to have a submarine in the headlines or something tomorrow. And end up being an indictment. It's the same thing. You can see there's going to be something that takes away the
It's funny you say that. I saw something the other day. CIA whistleblower from late 70s, early 80s, named Ralph McGehee, was talking about that exact thing, about the responses to information in the public sphere and then releasing disinformation as a distraction. They called it Wisner's Wurlitzer. And it was like he envisioned like a keyboard you could just play. And stories would go out because they had people in such a complex but sophisticated system of information management.
That, and when we see that sort of information, when we see something like that so groundbreaking, because that it really is grounds for impeachment for the current president, Joe Biden. So if when you see something that damning come out, the first thing I look for, and it's not just with the president, with anything like war in Ukraine, any sort of damning sort of information that comes out that goes against the general narrative, COVID, stuff like that, the first thing I look for is what is going to be in the headlines instead. What is going to be happening? Because there is always
distractions.
Yeah, the magician. Look over here. Look over here because you're not going to see what I'm doing over here. Misdirection. And you can see it everywhere. But that was the most recent one. I find it funny what they're indicting him for now, which is they're trying to prove that he knew the whole time that he had lost, and he was trying to and still trying to call into question the election. Which is, how can you prove if he still thinks he won? Like
he didn't take it as well as Al Gore did in 2010. Well, Al Gore had a much better argument than Trump, in my view.
Absolutely.
100%. I actually do have a cool little clip here. Goes for about a minute, so bear with me. But so he's obviously in trouble for calling into question the results of the election in 2020, which is there were things to look at. They were a little bit dodgy. But it's funny because all the Democrats are demonising him for doing that. So I found it funny when you could run this for half an hour, but I'll just play a minute of it. This is the Democrats after the 2016 election.
He knows he's an illegitimate president.
I think it's also critical to understand that, as I've been telling candidates who have come to see me, you can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
I think he's an illegitimate president that didn't really win. So how do you fight against that in 2020?
You are absolutely right.
The president is an illegitimate racist occupying the White House.
The Russian weighing in on the election, the Russian attempt to have the election, and frankly, the FBI's weighing in on the election, I think makes his election illegitimate.
He's illegitimate, and my biggest fear is that he's going to do it again with the help of Vlad, his best pal, and we're going to be stuck for 6 more years with this guy, and that is terrifying. It's terrifying.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate? Folks, look, I absolutely agree.
We had this little election back in 2018, and despite the final tally and the inauguration and the situation we find ourselves in, I do have one very affirmative statement to make. We won. I believe was a stolen election. And I'm not saying they stole it from me. They stole it from the voters of Georgia.
Classic.
That's where England got their line of argument from. We actually won.
He actually won? The old World Cup.
No, the cricket. The Ashes.
Oh, the cricket. Fuck, that's hilarious, mate. That's the moral victory that they're trying to play on. But as we can see there, they've done the exact same thing. You don't see any of them being indicted for causing an insurrection.
Hypocrisy is, pretty important in their diet, it would seem.
And I don't like this argument of the whataboutism. But they'll say, you're just doing whataboutism. Well, yeah, sort of, yes.
Whataboutism is just a way of deflecting from calling out your hypocrisies in some cases.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And, if we can, it's like a stupid little fucking, and I say this quite commonly, if 2 fucking stupid Aussies on a podcast 3 years ago can say that there's going to be some issues with Ukraine, there's going to be issues with China and the influence peddling that was going on with Hunter Biden, which we now know is true. it wasn't too hard to find and too hard to see.
No, and that's the sort of corruption that would have impeached other presidents.
Yes,
surely. I mean, Nixon.
And I've gotten to that point where I don't buy in fully to Trump. I don't say Trump's the answer. I probably was in that first one, and I fell for that. But if I'm looking at Trump, seeing him as a better option, that's even more concerning for me. I love that idea of RFK, and I love what you were saying before, because I do get worried, because I like what RFK's messaging is. He's very logical.
If he's legitimate, it'd be fantastic all the way with RFK. But yeah, I don't know. I'm skeptical of politicians, but he says all the right things. But so did Obama,
Yes.
And he came in at a time of crisis, and they sold the narrative of hope, and it's the last thing to die, which is why it's always an attractive political currency. But but
when we've got so RFK's 70, Trump's what, 78 something?
Yeah, but RFK's jacked.
Yeah, jacked.
Seen the guy?
Yeah.
Looks
phenomenal.
If he's using human growth hormone.
And then I think I think Biden's 80. He's going to be 82 or something like that.
Well, it doesn't matter how old Joe is. I mean, his cognitive function is clearly not sufficient to be the commander-in-chief.
100%.
Just a talking advertisement for the decay of empire, really, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the perfect example of that.
But I was looking through Sportsbet, the odds for the Democratic nominee. Like RFK's paying $11.
Are you kidding?
You know who else is on the go? Oscar De La Hoya.
Fuck off.
No way.
I was like, well, if Sportsbet's got him in as the odds, doesn't mean that he's running. I was like,
can I put a prediction out?
Sure.
This is a prediction with no. There's nothing behind this. This is just my prediction. Both Donald Trump and Biden will both be facing prison sentences. Not necessarily it will be resulted before the election, but they will both be facing prison or jail or criminal offences. So I think it'll end up being Kamala Harris will then temporarily take over as the running mate, and I think probably out of default potentially Ron DeSantis. And Gavin Newsom will run as vice president for Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris will be then found to be completely illiterate and no good, and potentially replaced by Gavin Newsom. That's my prediction. Because they don't want another straight white.
Well, no one can accuse you of not being ambitious with that prediction.
That's my prediction.
It's a big multi. Delby would be proud of that one. 100%. There's a lot of legs in it,
and that's why there's no basis behind that. But I just find, honestly, in real world, I think they're both going to run. It'll end up being Biden versus Trump, and they'll both be facing their own things. It'll be he did this versus he did that sort of case, and whoever wins the election, it will be contested. I think that's pretty.
I think just picking up on Corey's point before about him not having trust in RFK, thinking, we've seen this before with Obama. The only thing I would point out with that was with Obama, the establishment was clearly right behind him. Yes. He was the preferred person to run for president, and I don't think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has the establishment on board in that way. No. But obviously, cynicism in politicians is necessary. But where do we draw the line between what's cynicism and then what's legitimate compromise that you need to make in a system that you can't ride roughshod over and you can't control wholly? So if he gets in, what compromises does he make? Yeah. And then how do we judge him through the lens of cynicism? Do we say, he's just sold everything out, or has he had to make certain deals that were necessary to, get a partial agenda forward that might have been on the back burner for a long period of time?
Yeah, I do love that that speech. Well, I don't love that speech, but when Putin said, I've been through 3 or 4 presidents in my time, I've seen them come and go. I truly believe they all come in with the best of intentions. They sit down, they have these goals, and then the men with black suits and blue ties come in and tell them how they're going to run the world, not what they wanted to do. And I truly believe that's the case.
I was having a laugh with Corey about that the other day because it's pretty much the plot from Prison Break.
Fucking hell. Yeah. But
the company.
Yeah.
Running everything.
And I truly believe that someone I'm not one of those conspiracy theorists who think fucking Obama was born in wherever, Kenya,
Kenya,
stuff
I
like
think
that.
it was,
I think he truly ran with the best of intentions and just got in there and got fucked in the
It's
arse.
like that old Bill Hicks joke about, doesn't matter what your promises are on the campaign. Like when you get elected, you go into a smoky room filled with all the capitalist, industrialist scumfucks who own everything. And they play a tape of the Kennedy assassination from an angle no one's ever seen before. They're like, okay, here's your agenda, mate.
Yeah.
You're invading Iraq.
100%. And you look at someone like Obama who's gone into office looking like a fresh-faced younger bloke and coming out looking like he's had one of the biggest battles of his life. It doesn't look like the easiest thing
Well,
to
you know what?
to
And I
do.
think that would explain a lot of Anthony Albanese prime ministership. I mean, he came in and said, yeah, we're going to tell the Americans we want Julian Assange home. It's like, no, you fucking don't. You're a vassal state. You'll do as we say. Bend over. Here's a submarine deal that's going to take you apart.
Yeah.
And I think he's capitulated in many ways.
But how long's Albo been in public life
He's
for?
been
Though,
in
to have
public
that
life
level of naivety, having been walking the corridors of power for however many years you've had. Like I find it hard to believe that he would have that level of naivety. There's more so,
maybe there was a file on him that he didn't know about that he was shown after he got sworn in by
maybe
the
it was
American
just
embassy.
Weasel words like John Pilger would call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a letdown. It is a great shame, though, because a lot of people had high hopes for Anthony Albanese. And that's not to say his entire prime ministership's been a write-off, but he is backing a losing horse in The Voice. I feel bad for him in that regard. He's going to be defined by it with his legacy.
Yeah. Before we go on to The Voice, because I do want to chat about that and the Heritage Act being revoked, let's go back to Assange, because that's something we did get to see and witness, and the feeling was incredible watching his dad speak. And you could feel the room.
I'll tell you what, I'm so glad I didn't have to go on after him.
Oh, my Lord. You could hear a pin drop. I had shivers down the back of my spine listening to him talk. And it was very, it was interesting because the way he spoke was very broken English and very slow. And I actually got the feeling that there was something going on there a bit cognitively. That's how it felt. But whatever he delivered, the messaging was incredible.
I love the way he appealed to Australia's better angels, because there's a lot of examples of Australia's better angels and the better side of our, culture coming to the fore. And he appealed to that, which I thought was very tactful. And but he was just like, your favourite old uncle, he was a very warm soul, and what he's endured, he carried himself with an immense dignity, which I couldn't help but find, so admirable.
Yeah. He was less about preaching the hate and the not violence, but the pushback against what's happening to him, and just preaching unity and exposing truths. It was fucking beautiful. Do you get to speak to him much backstage? You could see,
No, he was very warm and nice to talk to, and he just had this magnetism about him. Like you just wanted to take him home and give him a cuddle. It was.
I can't explain how that made everyone feel. But the whole thing, Ed Dowd and his breaking down of the insurance data.
Yeah, the insurance data was
that
insane.
was the highlight to really point out the life insurance claims and policy claims for certain demographics had spiked at a specific point, in which also correlated with the mandating of the vaccinations. It was such an incredible way of looking at it, and fucking eye-opening. Because
isn't it funny though that the most damning data came from insurance companies?
Well, it's not surprising as well that they would analyse it within an inch of its life to figure out what their financial exposure is going to be to it, and then do things behind the scenes to act accordingly to protect themselves. But I think it's also like a great indicator of truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like if they're taking all of these actions and they have all of these concerns, there must be something going on.
Well, there's something. And the point that he made, which I absolutely love this point, he's like, either the vaccine has had the impact that we're saying health-wise in regards to it's caused a lot of all-cause mortality issues, or the actions and the implementations that the government put in place have created this as well. So either your government's handled the situation completely poorly and raised a created a spike in all-cause mortality deaths, or it was a vaccine. One or the other. Either way, there is something that has happened, and I really loved that he pointed that out. So that assumption that potentially, it's not the vaccine that's caused these issues. Fuck, well then what has caused the spike? Well, the fact that you couldn't go to hospitals, the fact that you couldn't see loved ones, and the mental health aspect. There was so many other things. So either way, one or the other, the government's got something to answer to.
You know, it'd be funny though is if I go and apply for a life insurance policy, and one of the questions is, have you had your COVID-19 vaccine? Do you get a discount if you haven't, or are you going to get an increase in your premium if you have?
Wow, I'm interested.
Maybe we'll have to hit up alltradescover.com. and,
I think that's outside their wheelhouse.
Outside their wheelhouse?
I don't think they do life insurance.
Well, let's add an life insurance division at All Trades Cover.
Having said that, I don't want to, stop John getting any, potential subscriptions if that's the case. So,
I think if you want life insurance, you go to Elliott Insurance, but potentially.
I had applied for public liability cover the other day to go for the Sydney gigs.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, you're covered for defamation, but not sexual assault, which I found very funny.
What the fuck?
I was just like, oh, damn.
Damn, Jesus. What date are you in Sydney?
September 19th, 20th, 21st September.
I thought you were going to say September 9th.
That's the weekend of my birthday, so I'm not decided if I'm going that early yet, but I'm probably going to fly in earliest 14th at this stage, but I haven't booked any flights.
Because we're there for Up and Joke on September 8th.
Yeah, right.
So I fly to Melbourne, do a bit of work on the Friday, watch a bit of footy, Friday night footy. I think it looks like it's going to be Collingwood Melbourne, which will be average.
Tasty, very tasty.
So go watch that, then fly to Sydney in the morning, do our show that night at
DY,
yeah. RSL in Newcastle, I think.
No, it's DY.
DY? Is that where it's called?
Yeah, the suburb's called DY.
Oh, fuck. Okay, cool. So, yeah, that's going to be awesome. But, yeah, and then the UFC the next day.
Yeah, right.
So that's Adesanya versus Strickland.
Yeah, they just announced it today.
Yeah. So
that's huge.
So yeah, it's going to be good fun. It would have been perfect if you were there.
I haven't booked any flights yet. So if you want to fucking hook me up with a flight from one of your Patreons,
yeah, well,
I'll come.
Yeah, fuck.
No, but my brother's might be having a child that weekend, and it's my birthday, so I'm not sure if I'm gonna go because I really want to go home for that.
Yeah, no. But that's actually how is all the comedy and stuff going? Because it seems to be like you're able to draw a crowd now by yourself, which is
it's fun, mate. But like you say, my favourite is still the club comedy. You know, to encounter people with different views who 18 months ago would have happily seen us discarded from society or whatever. And yeah, that's still my favourite. But yeah, gigs have been great. Loving new material and. Off to Melbourne Monday for a couple of weeks there. So if anyone's in Melbourne, get some tickets live at the Exit.
Do you find it's a certain avenue of people at the moment? Like do you do get your crackhead fucking pot fucking
absolutely. But what's funny is it's like as I said earlier, it's such a diversity of people who are I guess committed to rational thinking and value comedy. It's a broad church, and I think it's only getting bigger. And you see it in the clubs. Like I have the most loud laughs, I guess. Most gigs when I'm on whatever spot I'm in, and it's the hard material. But I think people want the authentic stuff more now than ever.
I'm starting to get to that point where I think I'm getting to a point where I want to start diving into those sorts of topics that I like. I think I'm getting enough stage time to be able to potentially attack some of these topics. But I do also understand you need to be able to do them well, and they need to be done correctly, or it's you're going to look like an arsehole. And it's hard because I'll watch even you, who's been doing it for a while.
You can't be afraid to look like an arsehole sometimes.
Yes, 100%. So, and like I said last
night, don't take advice from me. Look where it's gotten me.
Yeah, well, last night it was, and I said to you just before we got on, it was so good to try new material without the fear of it bombing. Just the art of trying to work out a new joke, a new premise. It was actually exciting, and the fact that some of it worked was even better. But that's what ECC's for. It's a good room for that, I guess. But there's plenty going on. Obviously, let's go back to the Voice, because the Voice is such a We started chatting about it the other day with me not knowing much about this. Didn't know there was a referendum. And yeah, so Squirly and James McCann tried to explain it to me in part. What I was hearing, I wasn't totally a fan of yet. It felt very posturing to doing the right thing, giving a voice, but no real change is going to happen. Do you guys know more about this? Or
Yeah, well, look, I mean, briefly, it's inserting a welcome to country into the Constitution and then creating a bureaucracy around advising governments as to the interests of Aboriginal people that have no enforcement. They're not legally reviewable. They're not enforceable in any way. And it's just another case of the government being able to take advice it disregards. And it's going to cost the taxpayer an enormous amount of money. Having said that, I do appreciate the power and importance of symbolic gestures.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are strong arguments in favour for it, but you can understand people's reluctance to trust anything the government puts forward after the last 2 years. I mean, we have an enormous trust deficit in our societies, and you can't blame people. I mean, Pfizer came out and said, we support the voice. It's like the Uluru statement from the heart's going to have myocarditis, but
that's good.
What are we going to vaccinate sacred sites against Rio Tinto destroying them? And then, you know, so look, one argument that stuck with me is someone I know, and she's Indigenous, and you know, I guess she's got her skepticisms about it too, but she said, you know, I'm going to vote yes because I don't want my sons to grow up hearing their Aboriginality rejected by the population in that way. But yeah, look, I don't think it matters how I vote or how we vote. I don't think this referendum is going to go within the required numbers to be remotely successful. I think it's going to fail in every state.
And that lack of trust that's the issue. That's 2.5 years, but not 2.5 years, fucking 2.5 decades of this. But really, the last 2.5 years were horrific. Trust us, do what we say, what we're saying is correct, and what you say doesn't fucking matter. And if you say something that we don't agree with, not only are you wrong, we're going to censor you. And ignore all public debate. Yeah.
What about what's going on with the revelations with the Twitter files, the Facebook files, the Biden v. Missouri case that's been going on? The vast web of censorship and government cooperation through Silicon Valley and the tech companies. I mean, it's frightening. And there's just not a whisper of it anywhere.
And this is why, like, the conversation I have with my dad, who's an avid news watcher, and my conversations are like, yeah, well, okay, if this is in the news, what's not in the news? Because that's what you should be paying attention to. And we're seeing this sort of censorship. Hunter Biden laptop is a perfect example, obviously being completely censored knowingly by the FBI. Knew it was real, and they still censored the fact that the story was happening. But we see this with COVID debate, you know, like lockdowns. There was zero science behind the lockdowns being put into place, even though they were telling us there was.
What I found so funny is the emails that have come out between the tech companies and the federal government in the US and the CIA, etc., asking for certain things to be taken down, targeting memes.
Yes.
Right? Like, this is how afraid of comedy the powerful are, is that they were going after joke accounts on Twitter, memes on Facebook.
Yeah.
There's Australian governments who put in requests to have things taken down from these platforms. And now the government's got this online misinformation bill in the pipeline where they have the power to decide what is and what isn't true. And there's enormous fines for people who spread disinformation. So, you know, you might need some more Patreon supporters, mate, because you might have some whopping fines in the pipeline.
Mate, 100% is something that we genuinely consider now when we're talking. Like, we say allegedly, like intentionally now. We have to say allegedly. Because you don't know, especially with these new bills that they're trying to pass, it's scary that me saying something or discuss, the very idea that we can't even discuss or debate a topic openly and see both sides of the argument.
Without being branded as a disinformation peddler.
Exactly. It's scary. And we're living in fucking Orwell's 1984. We are there. We're being watched and monitored at all times. Like the the dystopian future that we all fear isn't coming. It's here. We're living in it. And the only thing that I feel they have left to add is potentially all digital currency in which they have complete control to be able to shut down your finances if you're going against what they say. That's probably the final.
a lot of sleep at night over the pending digital currency because what's going to be the mechanism to bring it in? Because I think there'll be some resistance, but is it going to be an economic crisis? Is government going to say, okay, everyone's bank accounts are frozen, there's bail-in, you can only have your money back if you have it in our new currency? It's going to be frightening.
This is what
there's no coming back from that once currency is digital. I mean, it's a complete surveillance state.
And that's my fear, is that it would be... it almost feels like, and again, you can say, is it by design or is it by incompetence? But it feels like by design that they're almost trying to fuck the world's economy to a point at which they have to, okay, all money's failed. Here's a replacement.
This is the solution.
You get your money back, but you have to have it in a digital form. Apologies, you had 600 grand sitting in the bank earning interest, but now it's gone, but you can have it like this.
And you've got to spend it within 12 months.
Yeah,
and
you
on
cannot,
certain things.
You cannot retire. Let's take my parents, for example. You know, they want to retire in Thailand, that sort of stuff. Your money, you can't spend it over there. We want you to spend it in Australia. Stuff like that. You know, once you get rid of cash and we become a cashless society, all control is gone. And people say, well, as if they're going to, turn off your money. Well, fuck, we've seen it in Canada last year. Like, this isn't a conspiracy theory.
We saw it with WikiLeaks as well.
Oh, yeah, how so?
Well, early on, after all the leaks came out, the like PayPal, MasterCard, all of these other financial service providers basically froze WikiLeaks accounts and stopped any sort of donations being made to them. So, it's exactly on the point.
Yeah, and the appeal of digital currency and bitcoins and these sorts of things, the cryptocurrency, was the decentralized manner of it. The government didn't have control, the state didn't have control over what you were doing. But we found an issue with the Canada stuff was the people who were paying their or donating money to the truckers' cause were paying it through, from memory, wallets that they didn't own. They were owned by an outside source. And then so the government or the state would put pressure on the outside company to freeze that account. But if you owned your own hard copy of Bitcoin or own hard copy, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it's called, but basically have your own wallet, they can't monitor that, they can't stop that, they can't do anything like that. So from memory, and I'll have to go back, you maybe go back and listen to an episode, I'll share it on the story, where we talk about the methods in which you can get around state control over digital currency. But that aside, regardless, the digital currency that they're talking about is not Bitcoin, it's not Ethereum, it is
central bank
digital currencies, which is a concern because that's where all of our money, that's how are you meant to get by, how are you meant to pay rent, how are you meant to pay mortgages, how are you meant to buy groceries. It's going to be interesting.
Well, what I find so interesting about it is people's disinterest.
Yeah.
I remember Kurt Vonnegut wrote something about his end of his life. He said, one thing that's making me sad and indeed unfunny is the realization that people just don't care. And I understand it, I mean, look what we've just lived through. If that's not going to wake people up as to what's coming down the pipeline, nothing will.
Again, I use my dad as an example because these are the conversations I have with my dad, who's on that mainstream narrative path. He can see through it a bit, but we'll have those sorts of conversations. He's like, nah, there's fucking no way they will get rid of cash. Australia will stand up. And I said, well, I really would have hoped they would have done that in the COVID situation. I really wish they would have done that. And he's like, well, hopefully we've learned from that. And I do hope we have learned that if there's something that we don't want and we don't agree with, Australia will stand up and say no. But I don't think it will.
I think the problem is it's like a individualistic sort of approach to the issue. People think, oh, well, only people who have something to hide, who don't want to have all of their monetary transactions, followed, have something to worry about. But it's not about that. It's the broader issue. It's the fact that there's the capacity to look at that for any particular person. So if you become a problem child or some sort of, issue to the establishment, they can go looking through absolutely every transaction that you've ever made. And there's so much information that you can glean about a person, including like what their routine's like. You can see like where they're getting coffees every morning, where they're having lunch. You can piece together a really good snapshot about what somebody's life looks like. So it's not about, I'm a law-abiding citizen, I've got nothing to be concerned about. It's like, well, what information is now at the government's disposal if they decide that they've got an issue with you?
Well, you see it even now at self-checkouts. Have you noticed at self-checkouts at like a Coles or a Woolworths, they have the camera there. And it's you can see your face on the thing. So not only do they have your bank account details, what you've purchased, what time you bought it, they've got your facial recognition. They've got everything.
Well, going back to your point, though, Rob, about piecing together a picture of someone's life from reading a bank statement. I mean, I did that when I was a lawyer. You look over disclosure, and you look through. It's like someone's made a withdrawal in Northbridge at 3:00 in the morning for $400 on a Saturday night.
Yeah,
is he going to the Knockers or is he getting a bag?
Oh man, I've got a funny story.
Little from
about
column
that,
A, little from column B. Go.
I had this case where I was going through this person's bank statements, and I kept seeing all these references to Locanto. And I'm like, what the hell's Locanto? And anyway, in this case, it'd been alleged that someone was running a rub and tug out of the back of a house. So I've Googled Locanto.
Probably Delby. Delby's old place.
Well, so I've Googled Locanto, and it turns out it's like a Reddit sort of thing where it's like online classifieds for advertisements. So I punched in this the impugned person's phone number, and sure enough, an advertisement comes up for $50 special handshakes with your massage.
Oh my God. Fuck yeah.
It was pretty irrelevant, but I had a huge laugh.
Was it Delby?
Nah, thankfully it wasn't Delby. But just in terms of getting information about from a bank statement.
Yeah.
There's a prime example. That's something you probably wanted to keep on the down low.
Yeah. But I can't see it stopping. I can't see it. It's already implemented, isn't it? I think July 1st.
Yeah, there's trials going on around the place. So
it's going to be interesting. But the inflation, they're trying to argue that we're not in, the inflation's not happening. This is being like Biden, the Bidenomics. Bidenomics is hilarious, but that inflation isn't happening. And people say to me, well, what's happening in America? It doesn't affect us. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you looking at the fuel bowser? Are you looking at I go to a shop now for a quick little top-up shop midweek. And I'll be like, it's fucking $150.
It's funny you say this because what's the economic theory is that if you raise interest rates, people spend more on their mortgage, which means that everyday commodities are going to go down in price because there's less expendable income. Interest rates are higher than they've ever been for a long time.
Yeah.
And 12 months ago, you could get a full chook bachelor's handbag from Coles for $10. 6 months ago it was $11. I went down to Coles last week and it's $12.
It's fucking nuts, man.
These other commodities which are supposed to be coming down in price seem to be going up. So I don't know. I feel like the economic theory is all just this sort of like this lie we've all agreed upon to explain things, and it's just bullshit.
And it scares me because I've got a lot of friends who have extended themselves to a point. And this is just through mortgages. We're not talking all the other expenses. We're just talking like your interest rates, and they might be in a locked-in rate. And when that ends, because you can only lock in for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever you end up doing. Like if they go from 0.5% or 1% to paying 4 or 5% on a $400,000, $600,000 loan, that's a huge difference. That interest rate, that's for some people have that I know myself personally have had their interest rates go up and they're invariable or whatever, and they're paying close to $1,500 to $2,000 extra a month just in mortgage interest. Add into that the extra cost of living of trying to just get by, fucking buying toilet paper and your essentials. Like it's going to be really tough for people, and they're going to lose a lot.
I suppose what it means is for a lot of people, when those interest rates kick in, you're no longer really owning your house anymore. You're effectively renting it, because if you can only afford to pay the interest
Mm-hmm.
on the loan. You can't afford any of the principal anymore. I suspect that will happen with a lot of people. A lot of people will contact their banks and say, can I go on interest only? I can't afford to pay the principal and the interest at the moment. And
100%.
It's going to be really sad. You know, like I'm in sort of two minds about how much sympathy I have for people in excessive mortgage stress, because I think there's a lot of keeping up with the Joneses mentality out there these days. I think a lot of people might have bought houses that were probably beyond their station in life or what they could safely afford, and they didn't really take into account interest rate rises, because we've grown up in this period where interest rates have been so low. So you become desensitized and you think there's normal, and that's just how it's gonna be. And I think there's a lot of people who didn't do those sort of maths. Like, what happens if the interest rates go up? Like, we're already right at the edge here on what we can afford to pay back, and if this goes up, we're in big trouble.
Yeah, and
I don't want to be too harsh on it though.
No, but I totally...
You know what I mean? Like, there's that element to it as well.
Keeping up with the Joneses is a thing, because people like see fucking Kardashians on TV. They see Instagram. They see perfect life, and they want to keep up with it. They want to be the ones who are on the holidays, and as well as they've got the nice house.
Life, the movie on Facebook's got to look good.
Yeah, fuck. But for me, like, I've totally detached from that. I'm a live within your means sort of guy.
100%, me too.
I'd rather, and I hope this doesn't happen, but I'd rather pinch my pennies and have, like, not have to worry about, fuck, I got to pay this debt, this bill, this, that, and go down the beach for a fucking day.
You want to have a rainy day fund. Where if something happens, you know, okay, I've got a little stack of cash that I can sit on, and 100%. I'm not just, you know, in a...
Especially as a single dad, man. Like, I'm the provider for my daughter, 50% provider. If I can't get her food, or if I can't do these sorts of things because I've decided I want a nicer car or a nicer house, then I'm not doing my job as a provider. So I'd much rather, and it is nice to have that little rainy day fund, and I'm trying to work on building that up, and I'm not perfect, but everyone who listens to this podcast knows I'd rather take a risk in life in this, try and get this going, and try and be happy and live within my means and live a more simpler life. Even when I travel, I'm going to Italy for a trip soon for a wedding. So I've sort of got to go, but I'm living the cheapest possible way. I'm catching trains everywhere. I don't do it all the...
Staying in a hostel?
But I haven't finalised all my bookings, but I think I will stay in hostels. Like, I just don't give a fuck, man. I'm by myself. Like,
I give you one night having to share a hostel with a fat Turkish guy snoring his head off, and you're on 2 hours sleep, and you go into a murderous rage.
I'll try not to do that. I'd prefer to just go like an Airbnb, little small room. I don't give a fuck about the nice flashy apartments and stuff like that.
Do what Legacy does. Get yourself on Tinder and see if you can't just...
I just spoke to Legacy actually on a Patreon episode. I'm going to ask you to move that way for my own... There we go. A bit more centralised. Sorry for the YouTube watchers. I get a little bit OCD. But yeah. So interest rates and stuff obviously on the rise, and I don't see a lot of people surviving it, and it scares me. And I don't like, we see the house. I was looking at the house prices over the last 20 years have gone up like. Forgive me for not being perfect with these numbers, but it was like 148% rise in a house price over the last 20 years. And the average household earnings has gone up like 14% or 40% or so. It's minor. It's nowhere near the same. So how are we expected just with the housing prices to be able to keep up, let alone the interest rates, let alone the cost of living, let alone fucking petrol? I went to get petrol this morning at $2.15 a litre. Like $2.15 a litre. That's I don't. It's not.
I swear it's Monday and Tuesday are the good days.
100%.
They're the days you got to hit it.
But it is scary. But then obviously we talked about The Voice before, but the Heritage Act just got revoked, which is
what a stunning backflip. I saw the Premier Roger Cook say yesterday he apologised for the stress, confusion, and division caused by the legislation. I thought, well, it's nice to see someone own up and apologise. And to be fair to Roger Cook, he's inherited a turd sandwich from his predecessor who jumped a sinking ship.
Oh, didn't he?
But how was the results in the Rockingham by-election, which I was asked to potentially run in, by the way, after that gig? Funny story. But yeah, I mean, there's a big swing against the Labor Party. And if there was an election held today, they'd go close to losing government, notwithstanding the whopping majority they've got. I think it's a testament to how sour people are on Mark McGowan and the Labor Party and what happened in 2021 and the mismanagement of the state's finances. But yeah, look, I think history is going to repeat itself. Because remember in 2006, Jeff Gallup, he resigned. Depression.
Yep.
Then there was a federal election, Kevin 07. Every government across the land was a Labor government.
Switched.
And then Troy Buswell stepped down as opposition leader here.
Yes.
Colin Barnett took the reins, and the Triple C handed down a report into some corrupt Labor ministers. The polling went through the roof, and they lost government. And I think the same thing will play out here. And I think the Triple C is going to hand down a damning report about the Premier and preferential treatment given to Labor Party donors for G2G passes to get in and out of the state. Remember that, old chestnut?
Yeah.
When the children of billionaires seemed to be able to travel whenever they wanted, but the rest of us plebs were locked in like fucking prisoners.
And that's the thing, Mark McGowan. Let's talk before we get on to Roger Cook, because I want your opinions on Roger Cook and what he's been doing. But McGowan jumping ship that's what it was. Let's not pretend he was tired or exhausted. I've heard other rumblings, and we won't go deeper into potential why another reason why he's stepped down. But he's jumped a sinking ship, and I don't think he was willing to face up to a landslide loss in the next election.
Well, I think he knew what was coming, and I think he probably thought his own position was a bit untenable. I refuse to believe anyone walks away from that level of power. I mean, he's the envy of the Westminster world. He could do whatever he wants with legislation. Why would you walk away from that? I certainly wouldn't.
There's certainly something a bit dodgy. But his handling of the whole situation, and this has been our disagreement with him the whole time, because I would never want to be in his situation. I wouldn't want to be, and I know you jest there that you wouldn't give up that sort of power, but I would not want to be in his situation or any president or prime minister or premier situation. For me, that's my personal opinion. But his rigidity and his arrogance in which he delivered his commentary on certain situations, he can't backpedal from there. You can't go, I'm sorry, we were wrong in this, or hey, maybe we did this incorrectly, but we were trying our best. He can't do that when you're so arrogant and so fucking rigid in your ideas. And it's great initially to see Roger Cook apologise for something straight away, because very rarely do we see politicians put their hand up and say, yeah, this isn't going to work, or this we apologise. I think
it had an alternative. I think they were probably under pressure from the federal government to ditch the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act because it was reducing the chances of the voice referendum getting up in Western Australia.
He was questioned about that yesterday on 6PR, and he denied it.
Of course he did. He had to.
Said that he's not been contacted by the Prime Minister, and he only called the Prime Minister after the decision was been made as a courtesy.
Yeah,
no. But it has been put to him.
I think they were reading the political landscape very clearly. The by-election sent a huge signal. Labor's on the nose, and look, it was a smart political decision. I don't think he wanted to be dealing with that forever. The farmers were angry, and the miners were angry, and your average day person in the street was angry. I mean, it was unpopular legislation, but it's testament to what happens to legislation when there's no proper scrutiny, and there is an opposition that can't field a cricket team.
Yeah, this is true. Because they hold the majority, is that?
Yeah, it's an unprecedented majority. I think the opposition's down to about 6 or 7 seats.
Fuck. Yeah. So when there's no public debate, and this that comes back to that public debate, and not public debate, even fucking just in policy, like to debate an issue and to try and nut out the potential issues on both sides. I think it's something that's lacking. And certainly in WA government. But it's lacking in society at the moment. There's no public debate for anything on both sides. Even the other day, I was watching a vegan versus carnivore And it was very heavily based towards the carnivore. And I've switched to eating meat and stuff. But that's not how a debate works. It's got to be like you both have open conversations. They've clipped up these clips to make it seem that this person's worse and better.
Deceptive editing.
But yeah, and then that comes back to that censorship stuff. Like, how can we censor? And we go back to COVID, and I keep bringing it back up. But how can we censor experts in their field when they're making very valid points and concerns on potential risks, potential issues with the delivery and the way they've made the thing? So yeah, I think public debate is what we need more of. But even to say that, it's a controversial statement. I don't know. What do you guys think about
You're
that?
a relic, Branchy. You're a relic, mate, from a bygone era that used to value things like democracy and, open thinking.
Well, they've heard you're here. They've come down.
What have you heard?
Yeah, but like even but when something comes into the mainstream, I instantly and this is the lack of trust I have now. I instantly start to scrutinise it, start to get worried about like what. So let's take for example, perfect example, the alien stuff, the UFO stuff coming. It's very mainstream now. Now that so for 10 years I've been going, fuck yeah, I want it to come out. Surely this is happening. You sort of have this underlying idea that we've probably got crafts and stuff like that, and you have that in your head, and you want it to all come out. And I was so excited for all this sort of news, and then you start to see the news, and now I'm like, why are they saying it? And it instantly become,
what's it serving to distract us from?
Exactly. And I don't like that because I want the aliens to be real. I want everything that I've believed for the last 20 years and being a UFO fucking conspiracy theorist.
Surely you'd think the odds would suggest like there has to be something else out there.
Yeah, of course.
Like, look at what's out there. Like it's infinite apparently.
And so, but basically this guy who's been questioned and pretty it's gotten pretty serious, like Senate hearings and oversight committees and stuff, and they're questioning him. He's part of a retrieval program and has one of the highest clearances for security going around. So he's a very credible witness, and for him to be talking about this and have permission from his organisation to be able to talk about this makes me go, why? Why do they want him to talk about that? But at the same time, I do love that it's all coming out. Have you guys kept up to date with all the UFO stuff at all?
I've only heard about it. I haven't watched any of the hearings or anything like that. Just seen headlines.
You, Corey?
No, the last time I encountered the UFO stuff was Jeremy Corbell.
Okay.
And watched a film he made. But yeah, look, I mean, I'm of the view that, mathematically, they exist out there, and there's a lot of people who are credible. Like pilots, etc.
Of course, yeah.
That there's the odd cooker from Exmouth who gives. I was abducted in my car, leaving the pot shot.
Hey, Squirly co-hosts every now and then, so leave him alone.
I wasn't knocking Squirly. I wasn't knocking Exmouth. I was just merely saying there's a distinction between people who've seen things and people who are seeing things.
100%. But yeah, the first thing I think of is straight away what is it serving to distract us from? So,
I just wish they'd do something already, though. Like this sitting and waiting in the shadows game. Come on, I'm bored.
Yeah.
This threat of nuclear war between the US and Russia, I'm trying to desensitize to it now. I need an intergalactic threat to the planet to mobilize some form of humanist nationalism to bring us all together.
Well, that's the conspiracy theory. Did you know that?
It wouldn't surprise me.
That's the
a unifying event to bring humanity together. We're under attack.
There you go.
Yeah. This is our Independence Day.
Yeah,
it's like you.
Jeff Goldblum's come back for one last. It's the best Oscar goes to.
So, but that has been the conspiracy theory for so many years. The what was it? The NWO is going to trigger an event where we all need to get a vaccination, and it's going to be a microchip. That didn't obviously. I don't buy into the microchipping sort of stuff, but it started to play out this vaccination. Sort of idea, and then at one point there's going to be a false flag event where they will attack the world with quote unquote UFOs. It'll be our own stuff, but it'll be a unifying event where we have to come together under the one flag, one currency, all to fucking fight this out intergalactic opposition.
Pearl Harbor, but with satellites.
Until the war's over, and then it's about carving up how the Earth is ruled again,
Exactly.
like with every single war. So
that's the conspiracy theory has been for the last 20 years. And if I tell you what, if we get attacked by UFOs, I'll start going, what the fuck? I'll start getting.
Let's face it, we're as a point in civilization, as a people, we are not good soldiers to go up against like intergalactic foes that might descend upon the Earth.
No,
like. Probably like the softest freaking generation of humans that's just about ever lived. You know, people like me probably wanted to take a selfie with the alien instead of, railing to the common cause.
Yeah.
I just hope the Wagner group fights on our side.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. Well, let's talk about that because fuck, that coup was. We put up a little theory and it went a little viral with that money going missing, or not going missing. The money that they promised the Ukraine, they overestimated what they were going to give.
It was an accounting error of $6 billion.
Yeah, $6 billion. Fucking here you go. Here's an extra bit of money. Our theory was, and it wasn't just our theory, we'd heard other people say it, was that the Wagner Group basically took it, gave it to Putin, pretended to overthrow, and then he took the money himself. We got a lot of hate for that. But it seems a fucking lot more logical than where did it go?
I don't think anyone knows for certain. There's a few different explanations floating around. I saw one, which was that there is grumblings within the Russian military and the army. They're sick of Putin's gloves-on approach and incremental, careful movements. They just want to get this over and done with. Let's finish the war. We can do it. They don't like sitting and waiting.
I do like, and this is where I do gravitate towards a Trump or a RFK of the ending the war. I liked the way both RFK and Trump have both said it's not about beating Russia. It's about, and so eloquently put by Trump, I want people to stop dying. Like it is. It's about stopping the war. It's not about one side winning and one side losing. It is about stopping people dying, and the poor people of Ukraine are stuck in the middle of this fucking proxy war.
It's the irony, though, isn't it, of the mobilization of like the masses in support of the war. They all think that they're doing the Ukrainian average person a massive favor. Like, these people are getting slaughtered,
annihilated
in the thousands. And I've been hearing that apparently they to fill the ranks of the Ukrainian army, they're basically having to abduct people. 14 million people have already left Ukraine because, the destabilization, the prospect of having to serve in a fruitless war. So it's just insane.
Yeah.
We're talking numbers of 300 to 350,000 casualties.
Yeah.
That's an entire, that's First World War numbers.
Yeah. It's not incredible. It's fucking disastrous. And it's, I think Mike Pence was running on the idea that we need to keep the war going. We need to beat Russia.
Tucker put an end to his political career.
Fuck, didn't he? Fucking Jesus. Did you see that?
I haven't seen it. I'm just thinking I'm missing out now.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, I love the start of that. Or not the start of that. Did you hear the question of like how many COVID shots did you have?
No, I missed that part of it.
So Tucker said to Pence, "How many COVID shots did you have?" And Pence replied, "Well, how many have you had?" And he's like, "None." And the crowd just went, "Whoa!" It was just, it was great to see. But he did. He shut that down because he said he was in support of.
He didn't care about American cities.
No.
Something like that. It was like, in terms of justifying expenditure to Ukraine, why aren't we spending it at home? Classic populist argument. But yeah, I can't believe Mike Pence was so poorly media trained. He walked into that one. It was an absolute horror. But I tell you what, the Ukrainian flags are coming out of the social media bios and profile pictures, aren't they? Hey?
Oh, fuck, man.
Oh, God. Remember how hard all in people went on that?
Yeah.
It was just...
but it happens all the time. Like I fell for it. Like my memories come back and they are really good to really just check myself and go, you were one of them. You were that as well.
You jumped on board.
Yeah, like the pride stuff. And you could change your Facebook thing to a rainbow color. This was like 11 years ago, whatever. You put a frame on. I changed mine to the pride, and like not that I dislike. Like gay people or LGBTQ, or it's not like anything against that, but again, it's more of why the fuck did I do that? Why was I that? Who the fuck is that guy? Like, there's no way I would be leaning into that sort of superficial nothing event. I get that people think representation matters, but me putting a pride fucking filter over the top of my profile picture doesn't help anything.
I think mostly it's showing that you're concerned about how the public sort of moral compass will perceive you.
Yes.
You're like, I want to be part of I want to be part of the group.
Yes.
You know, I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of what it's about. But, you know, that's part of the problem, isn't it? Because we live in a day and age where everybody wants to, you know, go in with the crowd rather than just live your truth, you know, silently.
Yeah, public perception.
On that point, though, I think in that issue and all those issues, people have had enough of the politics of shame. You know, this shaming is, well, if you're not doing it, you're on their team, you know, and people just had enough of that.
Yeah.
And I think that whole method of persuading and winning over people is breaking.
Yeah, well, when John Pinder was on, he made a great point of like, because he was neither here nor there. He didn't give a fuck. He was just like, oh, just whatever. And like, I reckon, you know, probably 70, 60% of the population were the same. Just like, I don't give a fuck. You have the extreme left, extreme right, and then the middle, which was the vast majority. And you said that the right people have gone right out of spite, and it's more of a like, yeah, okay, I get what you're saying, but I'm fucking over it. Stop pushing it in my face, like, and I totally see it happening in every aspect, in all of the. I don't like using the word woke anymore, but all of that woke culture stuff.
Neo-progressivism, that's the word you can use in lieu of woke, Branchy.
Neo-progressivism.
Yeah.
Sounds far more intellectual as well.
Yeah.
Fucking oath, neo-progressivism.
Because I don't like the word woke either.
Yeah, it seems to be it seems to have been tarnished now.
Well, phrases just get bandied around and they become sort of hackneyed, and I don't think there's like really a consensus about what it truly means as well. So you got all these people banding around a word as a slogan, and no one even we're not all on the same page about what it means.
Well, woke was initially like for people who had woken up, who were awake to. You'd see
it was a compliment, not a pejorative.
Yeah, it was the opposite. It was you see that the war in Iraq is a fucking sham, and you write #woke at the end of your comments on it. You know that movement has been hijacked by the lefty like posturing to a, I guess posturing to the.
I see it differently. I don't see it as a sort of failing of one side. I see it as more of a infiltration from the top down, because the story of our political lives was the radicalisation of the conservative parties and that fundamental changing of their economic philosophy to embrace neoliberalism and deregulation, deindustrialisation, low taxes, no government, small government type philosophy. And I think that sort of corruption of one side of politics jumped this aisle, and now it exists in left-wing politics, and that's why it's so divorced from reality and these insane ideas that aren't really connected to anything. And I think that's what's happened. I don't think it's one side that's just gone bad because they're bad.
Yeah,
I think it's a corruption of the ideas that underpin their beliefs.
And of course, we do see the people who lean into these sorts of ideas really starting to struggle.
Well, because they can't defend them.
Yeah.
This is the thing, and they won't defend them. And what I learned before, the vaccine thing was you can't negotiate in good faith with a bad religion. And modern left-wing politics is a bad religion. And it's got all the hallmarks of religion, It's intolerant, they're dogmatic, they're authoritarian. And if you don't camel-toe the party line, you're out.
Yeah. Well, COVID was a good wake-up call for a lot of people. I'm even seeing it now. Like my parents, you see the issues that my mum had with her, I have to say allegedly vaccine injury, because the doctors won't pin it to that. But they've said she had a genetic mutation in her blood that made her more prone to getting blood clots. And I was like, okay, cool. So what triggered the blood clot?
What triggered the mutation?
Yeah, well, the mutation you can be born with this issue. But what that means is that mutation then makes you very vulnerable to potential blood clots for whatever reason. Something can trigger it. And for her whole life, she's never had an issue. And then for one random reason, she started getting some issues about 3 or 4 weeks after getting her first vaccine. And they still won't attribute it to that, which is quite odd. And I won't name names, but I know there's a few doctors that I've spoken to who said they're not really allowed to.
Well, the gulf between what doctors say publicly and what they say privately is enormous. But this is the thing, everything in society, what people are willing to say publicly and what they say privately is so different. And the gulf is becoming so wide, and it makes you wonder how long it can hold. But these doctors, I'd like to know more about, the pressure that's being exerted on them at a professional level to keep certain things out of their medical notes for liability purposes and maintaining the prestige of the profession. Because let's be honest, the medical profession's got huge questions to answer.
Yeah. And this is something Chafee brought up the other week. They're regurgitating the information that they're being taught over the years. But if the information they're being taught is controlled by a centralised business that profits from them prescribing drugs as opposed to sourcing or fixing the cause of their issues, you're never going to have a positive result. It's always going to lean towards, here, have this pill to fix this problem, instead of, hey, you should stop eating that food, or you should maybe do a bit of regular exercise. Or
was it Rockefeller, Robbie, that sort of transformed American medical science and funded all those universities? And
Rockefeller put in.
They had the adjacent pharmaceutical businesses.
Yeah, I don't know if they had the adjacent pharmaceutical businesses, but they definitely pumped heaps and heaps of money into different medical research, like cured hookworm and stuff like this. But it was ironic because Rockefeller was really big on homeopathy. Which my understanding is basically traditional styles of
holistic
medicine. And then the philanthropic enterprise that he funded ended up basically becoming the scientific basis for the movement away from homeotherapy and into a more scientific or medically based sort of point of view. But yeah, I don't know if Rockefeller owned the pharmaceutical companies that were creating the drugs to address the health issues that the Rockefeller Foundation was trying to deal with, but it's very possible. I know he's sort of considered as the the pin-up boy for philanthrocapitalism.
I love Ambrose Bierce's definition of a philanthropist. It's like a wealthy, middle-aged, balding white man whose conscience is picking his pocket.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Do you know what I want to do as well before I will forget? I didn't do this last week. I stuffed up and I feel bad to the Patreons. So Patreons, I let ask questions and I let them know you guys were coming on. So I'm going to ask you guys some questions from our Patreons, if you guys don't mind.
I hope they're admissible.
So, do you know the reason behind the sudden departure of Mark McGowan? Oh, does anyone have any theories?
I heard,
allegedly,
on the grapevine, the scuttlebutt, that he was having an affair with a Rockingham councillor and that his wife found out.
I also heard that rumour. I also heard that he was going from state daddy to baby daddy.
Well, that's the rumour about Andrew Forrest too, hey? So he's busted up with his missus and apparently he's knocked up one of the lawyers that was working for him at either the investment arm of the Forrest Empire but FMG did an internal investigation and they cleared him of any wrongdoing.
Oh, my Lord.
But Nicola didn't clear him of any wrongdoing.
I did also see old mate Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, he's separated, eh?
And he asked for privacy because he has children. And I think
they're probably not even his.
Yeah, I find it quite ironic that he would ask for privacy in this hard time because, he was not a fan of privacy himself and monitoring and surveillance state. But
do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, don't let hypocrisy get in the way.
Yeah.
Did you? So, why am I hearing all of these things about potentially Justin Trudeau being gay and? Now, this is. Am I seeing these as because I follow certain?
Oh, I've seen it. The Obama one with Michelle Obama's a bloke secretly.
Oh,
or something.
Big Mike. Yeah,
but actually, I don't care about elitist sexuality as long as you don't fuck kids. I haven't got a problem with it.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, Obama literally today, he's the person who wrote his biography. Did you see this? Rebel News reported.
Yeah. But who cares? I mean,
he had. Exactly.
Who cares?
But why is that becoming a thing? Why am I seeing that everywhere?
Oh, well, I think sexuality is a way to smear people. It always has been in terms of character assassinations.
That scandal.
Speaking of assassinations and Obama, you see his chef died?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
Did you see the weird things? Now, well, I won't lean into the conspiracy that he was murdered, but like, there's some odd things that have happened there. Have you seen what?
Nah. So what's happened to his chef?
So his chef died in a tragic drowning in their lake on their island. He was paddleboarding. It was witnessed by another paddleboarder. Tried to get over to save him while he was drowning. He fell off the board and wasn't leashed to it and drowned. Now, this is odd because, one, he's a very good swimmer. He's if you've seen the vision of him swimming in the past, he can swim very well. He's jacked as well. Now, we don't know the circumstances.
Maybe he was full of fentanyl or something.
Yeah, exactly. So they're awaiting the toxicology report. There's no signs of a struggle or blunt trauma, which was a conspiracy theory that went around, and that the Obamas had tried to stop the postmortem. What do they call it? Is that what they call it? The
autopsy.
Autopsy. That's all conspiracy theory, but very odd that they would say he's drowned when he's quite clearly an elite swimmer. My other thought is potentially he had a heart attack while he was paddleboarding, because there's no explanation for why he would just fall off and drown.
Well, there is this thing about young people having heart attacks now. There's no one could figure out why.
Yeah, and then every single headline is like, did you see the headline the other day? Climate change is giving people anxiety and causing a spike in heart attacks.
Oh, wow. It's solar flares, anxiety, cold water, hot water, exercise. I mean, what's going to be the next thing that causes things? I don't know. But anyone who claims to know is a charlatan, in my view.
What do you think of the backflip from the West Australian government in regards to the land size situation? What's that?
Land size, the
Heritage
Act. So what is that? What the change is in the
They've
Heritage?
scrapped the legislation entirely, and they're going back to the 1972 model with a few tweaks, and it's a stunning humiliation, really. But good on Roger Cook for putting his hand up and saying, this stinks. It's unworkable. It's too complex. We're getting rid of it.
Yeah.
If we're going to be harsh on politicians and cynical towards
Yeah,
them,
you
they've
got
got it's the one thing that's missing from public life is people being able to put their hands up and say, I stuffed up, and I'm just going to say sorry for it, rather than double down on it.
Amused me is all the time that money that got wasted with that, and then he came out and said, I apologise. So for the stress, confusion and anxiety, what about an apology for the vaccine?
Yeah.
That caused way more stress. And, like we said, we hate to keep harping on about it, but it was the most transformative event for many people's lives they've ever seen.
It's huge. Like, I'm a pretty resilient person. I like to think I'm very resilient, pretty strong. And I went through a lot during that time period. I went through a divorce. I went through, financial struggles because your business gets shut down and you can't work. So you're sort of worrying about that. I'm trying to be a single dad. I'm trying to fucking be a good friend. And I was, like I said, I'm very resilient, very tough, I think, myself. And even I had anxiety attacks, panic attacks, because I thought I was going to lose everything. I thought I was going to lose my daughter, the thing most important to me. Because if I can't afford to look after her, then she'd get taken away from me. And the fact that I wasn't going to get vaccinated, I thought they would be like, well, no, you can't. You lose the right to be a parent.
You're now a risk to your child.
Yeah,
somehow.
exactly. So I started to get all these, and I I'm a very strong person. If I'm having these sorts of struggles, imagine someone who's not built with resilience and has had an easy upbringing. They were no wonder there was an upheaval and fucking a surge in mental health problems and other issues, because we live in a very unresilient society, and so if someone like me, who I feel like I can really take things on the chin and do the hard things, is going to struggle and have anxiety attacks, debilitating anxiety, shaking attacks. Fuck. What about that poor bloke or girl who can't handle it?
The thing for
not
me
even an apology.
Was, and I've said this in my show, is people who are on the other side of this argument will never know what it was like to be contemplating being ostracised and excluded from society for an indeterminate period of time. I mean, everything that I've worked towards in my life, being an officer of the court, practicing law, stand up, that was all going to be taken away from me because I didn't want the vaccine.
Yeah.
And to be contemplating that, like you say, the stress and anxiety that caused. I mean, I remember waking up every day going, I hope that this is a bad dream.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
Well, the fact that it's been shown emphatically that it was, one, it didn't do what they said it was going to do, which was stop you giving it to others. That was the whole thing.
That's the main pitch.
Yeah, you're being selfish. You're not. Even though you're going to be safe, get it for other people. And it was going to stop you from getting it. Both of them incorrect. So it ended up being a personal choice. It was a personal choice. Always should have been a personal choice. Even the fact that when they started to have pushback against the fact that you can still give it to other people and you can still get it. Well, you need to get it so you're better protected so you don't fill up the fucking hospital system. Well, no, that's not the case. I have I was not in a risk category. I was not in any danger at all. I don't care what anyone says. I was not. I had it, and I got a little bit sick. That's it. And that's exactly what was going to happen. And people say, well, you got lucky. No, I didn't get lucky. That's exactly what it did to me. It's like when I get the flu. Sometimes you get it bad. Sometimes you get it worse. Depends on like if you're run down, if you're working too much, if you're drinking too much, if you're not eating right, or whatever. Like there's so many different factors.
I was doing all those things and I was fine when I got
yeah. But I was like, I like run ultra marathons. I fucking eat healthy. I'm conscious of what I eat. I don't have fucking Panadol, let alone a fucking injection that has been rushed into production, that the company themselves that have created it have no liability against the ramifications of you having it. If the company who creates it aren't confident enough to say, yeah, we will be held accountable for anything that happens to you, then I'm not fucking comfortable enough to have it.
And not to mention a track record of criminal fraud.
Yes. Yeah, 100% of lying. Knowingly giving people things that are going to make them sick or worse.
It's
and
like
then
going on a date with Ted Bundy, knowing Ted Bundy's past. But everyone says he's such a good guy, you know? They see those cheekbones. And this is the thing about Justin Trudeau, right? It's like, imagine if Hitler looked like Justin Trudeau. The Third Reich would have come about so much easier with the cheekbones and the smile and the PR.
It is easy to see how the Nazi regime happened. Like you can see how they were charmed and
ironically, it's all the people who don't think that they're Nazis that are the ones who enable this type of shit.
Good Germans,
you know,
or the quiet Australians.
I never would have gone along with that. I never would have done that.
Yes,
like,
have you seen James McCann's
That's
bit on that?
That's the beauty of James's bit, right? Because, and that's the only angle you can take from it when you've had the jazz, right? It's just like I thought I would have been one of those people, but it turns out that I'm not.
I'm a shill. I had. I love that bit. I had a principal. Oh, that was he's doing great things. That's sent him bonkers. Viral.
Yeah. I was a little bit filthy though because I had the vaccine misinformation labels on all my content when those video clips are coming out, and then those labels have disappeared from social media.
They're gone. They are gone. YouTube seemed to put them at the bottom, but it's not even on the. It's not on the post. It's not on anything like that. It's like in the show notes sort of thing. Misinformation, disinformation,
malinformation,
all of this stuff. When you see now, and this is how I know I want to watch something. If I see a reel come up and it says false information and it blocks it off with that little blurb,
I want to watch it.
I want to watch it because I instantly go, I'll give it a watch now because potentially
I want to decide for myself.
100%. And then I read the PolitiFact or whoever fucking does the fact checking. I read their article to go, why do they say this is false information? And I'd say, okay, 50% of the time I'll go, yeah, they've made a good point. That's wrong because of this. I get it. 50% of the time I'm like, that's not what they're arguing. What do you like? You've found one little falsehood or one little thing where you've changed the context of what they've said and put it under the whole article or the whole clip is false.
So I see the whole fact-checking thing is just another layer of the whole misinformation thing as well. You know, like
censorship.
Who are these fact-checkers? You know, like how far removed are they from mainstream media sources, the sources that they're critiquing? Who
they're
are they
funded by the
connected
same
to?
people.
Well, this is right. So I see it as this sort of like this really like a shallow veneer of trying to create like something respectable to check truth. But I'm just like, nah, It all looks bogus.
But at the end of the day, like, we can see it. I think everyone can see it now. They see it all unfolding. But it's like what you said. No one gives a fuck. No one wants to. What would happen? Like, I'm sitting here going, as a person who tries to bring attention to certain issues with the platform we have, and that's not doing anything. It doesn't do anything for people to know. Like, maybe it does a little bit, but like, if you know the information, 9 times out of 10 you're still just going to go, oh well. Like, not many people would go to a protest.
Well, it's funny, you know, I find this apathy to be more prevalent amongst younger people. You know, I used to knock the boomers a lot, but say what you will about the boomers, at least they're interested in things still. The younger generation, the Zoomers, they've got an utter disinterest, and you see it when you go to a writers' festival. And the demographics, and I see it at stand-up, the people that want to come and talk to me afterwards, you know, they're older.
Yeah.
You know, young people are just tuned out. It's this ultimate apathy, and they're the ones that have got the most to lose, but they've got the least skin in the game.
Yeah. The youth is an interesting one, because they've obviously been, they're at this sort of stage in their life where instant gratification. They get everything they want when they want it, and if they don't, they fucking chuck a little shit fit. But they also have this odd difference where at one point they want everything then and there, but also they don't care as well. They're just so devoid.
They don't care about the things that matter, really. You know,
I think
they care about
point,
the image and status, but politically they're disinterested.
Yeah, and they think it doesn't affect them.
Why can't afford a house, you muppets? Because generations of housing policy have led you to this.
Yeah. It is that thing where it's sort of like these little things that happen. They're baby steps. They inch it in slowly, bit by bit, and then eventually you're like, fuck.
The incremental, just push.
Yeah, I'm seeing it everywhere. But yeah. So, and then obviously you brought it up before, Ukraine, Russia. We are edging towards World War III, and again, no one seems to give a fuck.
Well, it's funny because, I mean, the war's practically over with the Ukrainians, but the speculation that the Poles and the Lithuanians, who have designs on Western Ukraine, may go in on their own, not as part of a NATO force, but although they're part of NATO. And Putin said, if you cross the border into Ukraine, you'll never leave, which was pretty menacing remarks. And I watched something last night that the Russians attacked a port on the border with Romania with a hypersonic missile, send a signal. It's like, if anyone's thinking about it, I wouldn't advise. So yeah, it just makes you wonder how much longer can it go on.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been so much destruction of human life, and Putin's made his point. There's no chance of dislodging Russia from their position. Crimea is not going back into Ukrainian hands. Whether Ukraine still exists as a country remains to be seen after this. But
yeah, well, it's going to be rebuilt, mate. I don't know if you.
Well, Twiggy had 700 million to go over there and give Zelensky, but I tell you what, the flights of comedians going over to greet Zelensky have stopped, haven't they? I haven't seen anyone in the press going to get their photo with Zelensky.
What the fuck was Greta Thunberg doing with Zelensky?
Mate,
shouldn't she be saying this is not good for the environment? Surely that's the only conversation they.
I'm angry with you.
Surely that's the only conversation they can have. That is for media.
They're both symbols of truth and freedom now.
Oh, fuck. This is interesting. Climate change has become an ideology because I'm very supportive of not polluting the world and living in a cleaner environment. I'm very supportive of it. But now climate change has become a left and right wing ideology argument, and I don't like that either. It feels like all of these, and this is not left or right. This is both sides hijack their own sort of movements and use them for their own political gain. And why can't I just want to recycle? Why can't I just want to be an activist in certain ways, but then not be lumped into this group? And why can't I be an anti-establishment person and not be logged into this group? Like, I like to see the middle way, and I think that's the best way to see life. And I'm seeing it with even climate change.
I sort of noticed this in 2021 when it was the breakdown of trust in experts, and then people started to go, well, how much science can we trust? And it called into question other science. And I think there's legitimate issues with the way the climate change issue is dealt with. But for me, I mean, the science of the, global warming, it's pretty conclusive, especially when you're thinking the increased carbon into the water in the oceans makes it more acidic.
Yeah.
Changes the pH. So there are all sorts of environmental things that we need to address. But, lefties and that whole progressivism is toxic right now. And it's so funny to see it happen in my lifetime.
Yeah. It happened quickly.
And it used to be conservatives who walked out of my shows. And now it's lefties and conservatives like me, Yeah. It boggles my mind.
Yeah. It's interesting. And again, the public perception, the pendulum is swinging. And I'm very happy that it's happening because it's... I think it's a nicer world to live in when everyone's going back to the middle.
The sensible centre.
Yeah, the sensible centre is the perfect analogy. But yeah, I love it. So, how are we going? We're about an hour and a half. Is there anything you guys wanted to bring up? Yeah.
What else have we got? Oh, this is what I wanted to cover. The Sofronoff report, the inquiry into the Brittany Higgins trial.
Oh, yes.
The ACT chief prosecutor.
Yep.
Oof.
Yeah.
There's some findings made against. He's resigned. First of all, the government got the report and it was so damning they wanted to sit on it for a month to figure out how they were going to deal with it. And then it got leaked to the Australian, and the findings are brutal.
So explain for I know briefly what you're talking about.
So
but the listeners who might not know anything.
Yeah, so going back to 2021 with the Brittany Higgins saga, she was allegedly raped in Parliament House, she claimed, and there was, I guess, a politicisation of her case, and it was used for a political agenda, but it went to trial in the ACT Supreme Court. And when it was originally supposed to go to trial, Lisa Wilkinson, in her infinite wisdom, did a Logie speech and said that, she was telling the truth, essentially polluting the public mind against Bruce Lerman. That trial had to be aborted. The second one went awry, but there was an inquiry that the prosecutor called for in the aftermath of the trial. He called for an inquiry, and all the things that he brought to the attention of the inquirer were dismissed as baseless, and all his conduct was put under the microscope, and he lied to the Supreme Court.
It's great ironic comeuppance though, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, he falsely advanced claims of legal professional privilege to deny access to documents to Lerman's legal team. The Sofronoff said that it was a game of poker in which he held all the cards designed to not give them to the other opponent, to not give them a fair trial. And it cuts to the heart of people's faith in their institutions and the ability that you can go and get a fair trial and have faith in the officers of the court too, being able to conduct their job in a detached manner. And he had his own personal ambitions involved, I think, and he's thrown away a career. I mean, if that was in Western Australia and he did that, he would have been appointed to the Supreme Court, but or maybe not. But it's a very tawdry affair, and like we said earlier with the KPMG stuff, everything is corrupt, and all of these institutions are failing us. And once again, the biggest loser in the whole thing is Brittany Higgins, and that's the saddest thing about it. I think she's been taken advantage of by those journalists, Lisa Wilkinsons and the ruling class kennel witches. They didn't care about her. They only cared about their own vanity, advancing their own agenda.
Yeah.
Katie Gallagher the same. And she was failed by the DPP now too. I mean, how far else does it go?
And
what if Bruce Lerman's innocent? I mean, he sounds like a Nepo baby from way back. Walked out of the US as an 18-year-old straight into a job as a staffer in federal parliament. What kind of Nepo pick is that?
Yeah.
I ask. So yeah, it's a scandal you could write a book about, be a great movie, but our institutions failing us. Keep saying it.
That's the common theme of this episode.
People's lack of ethics.
No matter what the issue is, I don't think we can see a fair judgment on it, or no one can be held to account. The Biden stuff is a perfect example of that. Like we see genuine influence peddling. We see it, and it's not only does it not make the news, it's not being investigated. It's being completely ignored by the FBI. Like this is when we see that happening in front of us, of course we start to lose faith in everything. When the leader of the free world is potentially what's the word? not influence. It's what's the word when you're we'll just say corrupt. When the leader of the free world is corrupt and being influenced by foreign agents, that's surely something that needs to be at least investigated.
That's just the world we live in now. Like, corruption's out in the open. The elites don't care because they sense that there's no accountability for these things, you know?
But there's accountability one way, which makes me start going, why are they doing that to Trump? He can be held accountable for anything, but Biden can't be held accountable for this. And this makes me that's making me look at it going, this is a one-sided, this is a partial justice system. It's not like one, what is it? No one is above the law. It's whoever suits the political agenda or the narrative. And we see it with the Brittany Higgins stuff as well. It's like what drives forward the political agenda that we're trying to push.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, in that climate of 2021, the Me Too thing was still quite hot. And it was a way to attack the government. Really, and it was used politically, and it should have just been kept as. And I think if Brittany Higgins had a time again, she would do things very differently. And I don't think she would let herself be taken advantage of by political sharks and journalists. Use that word loosely, but yeah, it's a very tawdry affair. What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, I just feel terrible for Brittany Higgins. Really, like out of this whole thing, she's just been smashed from pillar to post, left, right, and centre.
Isn't that the issue with a lot of people who suffer sexual harassment or assault?
This is the unresolvable issue that we're faced with, because we have this tension between the system that re-victimizes people who have already, alleging to have gone through really traumatic things.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, we've got the presumption of innocence. We can't drop the standard of proof in terms of, for something like this, and we're going to take away somebody's liberties. So how can we negotiate the place between wanting to make sure the victims can come forward and have their day in court and not be completely re-traumatised, but also protect the integrity of our legal system? And there's a good reason that we have a high evidential bar for criminal matters, is because we know that the state will take advantage of it to put away people if we don't have a high criminal standard. So I think that's the irreconcilable problem that we sort of have at this moment, is how do we stop the system from re-victimising people who have already been horrifically abused, but also protect a core foundational block of the criminal legal justice system, which is the presumption of innocence and a beyond reasonable doubt evidential standard.
But there's a reason these problems haven't been solved for a long time, because they're extremely difficult. It's intractable, and no one's been able to solve it. And it's an imperfect system, and all these systems designed by humans are going to be imperfect. But
it is. It is. You see it even in cases. I guess the law's an interesting one. You two have both been lawyers. It's actually great to have you on, because Assange is a perfect example. Like, telling truth, like factually correct journalism, has been punished with, like his dad said, they're trying to drive him crazy.
It's being called treason, which is ridiculous, because I don't see how a guy who's not a national of the United States could be charged under US law, which was brought in during World War I to stop anti-war sentiments getting out, being called a traitor of the United States. He owes no allegiance to that country.
No.
He is not a traitor. You have to be a traitor, you have to be loyal to something.
You have to belong.
You have to belong.
But it is an argument that he did belong to Australia, and we are an American colony, so therefore...
That's what the Rap News episode says,
Yeah. But so what's the legal stuff there? Are you guys across that?
Defer to this gentleman here.
Oh, look, the legal side of it's really complicated, because there's been so many layers of it, of legal process. Like, originally, before Julian went into the Ecuadorian embassy, he was fighting the European arrest warrant that Sweden had issued, which was seeking his extradition to Sweden. And he tried to fight that. I read this judgment just the other week on the basis that the Swedish prosecutorial office was not a judicial authority for the purposes of the Extradition Act that they were seeking to do it under.
Yeah.
So basically, long story short for that one, like the High Court in Britain threw that one out. So then he was going to be extradited to Sweden, and that was when he went and sought asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy and was then charged with jumping bail in respect of the Swedish warrant.
Yeah.
And then since then, they've been seeking to extradite him. And at the first instance, the judge who decided the case, Vanessa Barresta, she ruled against extradition, not on the grounds that the extradition was politically motivated, which is absurd because it obviously is, but on the grounds that she couldn't be certain that Julian's health and mental health would be protected to the point that he wasn't a legitimate suicide risk in the United States. So when the United States appealed that decision, they gave all of these assurances to the appellate court that weren't given to the first instant court, saying basically we won't subject him to this thing called SAMs, which is special administrative measures, which basically can be used to put you in solitary confinement, restrict who you communicate with.
Torture, basically.
More or less, but on the appeal level, the main issue was whether or not the court could take into account information and assurances that wasn't put before the original court, bringing new evidence before it, basically. I can't remember exactly what the reasoning was, but long story short, it was the United States has been a wonderful ally of the United Kingdom for a long time, and leaders of democracy in the world, and we can trust their assurances. And the thing that was the most toxic about the whole trial is that the CIA had been spying on Julian Assange through a Spanish security firm that ran the security at the embassy, and they were watching all of his meetings with his lawyers. So the trial should have been abandoned from the get-go just because legal professional privilege had been breached, which is a foundational core principle of the law, that we can go and speak to our lawyers, not be listened to. What we tell them is secret, and that we can figure out with our lawyers how we're going to best adjudicate our case. So it's a judicial farce as far as I'm concerned, and the independence of the judiciary is going to be judged very harshly by history, depending on who writes the history book. But in my opinion, the British judiciary system has just done what its masters in Washington have dictated, and it's a disgrace.
Fuck, it's incredible to watch something like this unfold. Everyone probably, I'd say this would be a 90% of people feel the same as well, that this is a ridiculous thing that someone like him can be in prison for reporting truths.
Well, he made a lot of enemies in the media as well, because by getting the scoops that he did and making the revelations that he did, he shamed them into doing their own job and showed how cozy that they were with the centres of power that they're supposed to be critiquing. Because that's, we vaunt the media as the fifth estate, right? This, loyal watchdog of the public. It's going to hold power to account.
Meant to be, isn't it?
To make sure that centres of power aren't misbehaving and abusing their power. And what we've seen over the last 20, 30 years, probably more, is mainstream media cozying up more and more to the centres of power that they're supposed to critique, to the point where they probably all go into the kids all go to the same schools, they're running in the same social circles. It's about proximity to power and access to it rather than critiquing it. And if you're a legit journalism, you should be wearing as a badge of honour the fact that the centres of power hate you. If they hate you, you're doing your job well.
Yeah. And that's the thing you see with the lack of reporting on certain issues. You start to wonder what's going on, but you can see that they're sponsored. And they're sponsored by the same people or owned by the same majority share ownership, however you want to frame it. They're owned by the same people who own the weapons manufacturing companies, or they own the pharmaceutical companies that they're supposed to be reporting on and against and keeping as a neutral media source for the general public to see. But it's not. It's bought and paid for by the same people who want to control the narrative.
The other trick they try to pull with Julian Assange is they try to say that he's not a legitimate publisher. He's not a real journalist. What do you need a fucking doctorate? What is there a thing with that?
No.
Yeah, well, apparently you need a degree to be a journalist, but I'd argue that most of the journalists on TV, they're not really true journalists in terms of like journalistic spirit. Like they're stenographers of officialdom.
But like, if you have something on Substack or Reddit or something like, and you're a diligent fucking reporter on certain issues, it shouldn't matter. Like, if you're writing,
good independent journalists are still making good money on Substack. Like Matt Toby's killing it.
Yeah.
Substack.
Seymour Hersh's got a Substack.
I mean, you can find these things, but you have to go and pay for good journalism. This thing, we've taken it for granted our whole lives, and you have to pay for good journalism. But you know what? I think the saddest thing about the Julian Assange thing is, for me, is just the deafening silence of everyone in that profession. Because ultimately, the lesson of this is that can come for you too.
Yeah, you're next.
You're next. And at first, we didn't speak up when they came for Julian. Well, it was like, that whole riddle. And who's left to speak up? I mean, it's left to art, really, and that's the saddest thing about it.
What's the move forward for him? Is there a play in which we potentially see him come back and be extradited, or?
I don't think so. I think there's could come any day now. I think there's at some administrative level there's a decision being made on a final appeal, which we're not overly optimistic on. And if that's denied, he's got no further appeal avenues. The British Home Secretary, Priti Patel's already signed off on the extradition order or whatever document formalises the extradition. So if the High Court rules against this final appeal, then he's done. He's going over to the United States. His best hope is if the Yanks will send him over to Australia to serve out his time here. But I'm not very optimistic, and I'll be watching very closely and very interestedly to see to what extent they hold up any assurances that they gave at the appeal level that I talked to you about previously, about making sure that he's not subjected to torturous-like conditions and having special administrative measures placed on him. I'm not optimistic. I fully expect that they're just going to treat him like absolute garbage and break him even more than he's already been broken. Because this is the thing, and this is one thing that annoys me about the Andrew Tate thing as well, with him talking about himself being the most persecuted man in the world. And don't get me wrong, the system's undoubtedly coming after that guy, but Julian Assange has been in Belmarsh prison for several years now in high security, solitary confinement a lot of the time. Before that, he was in the Ecuadorian embassy. That guy is the most persecuted man in the world. That guy is the one who's threatened the system more than anybody else. This is not me trying to throw shade at Andrew Tate, but it's just one thing that when I hear him say certain things, it annoys me. I'm just like, you know what, mate? Like, Julian Assange is a far bigger martyr than you.
It is. It doesn't matter who it is, obviously. These sorts of people who are attacked by the mainstream media or the establishment.
Yeah.
There's usually a reason for it. And it's because they're threatening
they're threatening
power.
Something.
They're threatening
embarrass them. That's why he'll never be allowed out, because he lifted the lid and showed everyone the fire inside the cauldron and how power actually works in this world. And those WikiLeaks disclosures. I mean, the cable about Ukraine and the ambassador saying this will cause war.
Yep.
Yeah.
Niet means niet. Authored by the guy who's now the head of the CIA.
Yeah.
So many, the stuff about Pfizer and their conduct in Nigeria and the lengths they went to minimise any payout that they were going to have to give in that part of the world. We know all these things because of Julian Assange and probably not Julian, Chelsea Manning first and foremost. I mean,
yeah.
Julian published it.
Yeah.
And the way the establishment made a beeline for him, and I don't think anyone can ever forget that, the harmonisation of it.
Made a beeline for him after they'd taken certain great stories and, tried to do real journalism for about 5 minutes and then mobilised to the cause of smearing him thereafter.
Yeah,
giving no thanks for any of the information and
shout out to the Guardian. Cowards.
Yeah. But yeah, it is one of those things that I watch unfold as someone who loves, I guess, quote unquote journalism. And I like sort of public talk and public debate and being able to talk about what you want and freedom of speech, especially when it's true. And seeing someone like that with all of the attention that it's getting, which it still is getting enough attention, it's still no one's going to do anything.
He's the second Australian journalist to be targeted by the Americans. The other thing we know from the WikiLeaks disclosures was a fellow by the name of Wilfred Burchett. And after the Americans dropped the atomic weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he went in there as a foreign journalist and was finding out things that were contradicting the official narrative about the fallout and the devastation that had been caused by the dropping of the atomic weapons.
Yeah.
Americans hated him. Got to the point where the Australian government, under pressure from the Americans, cancelled his passport, left him stateless.
Fuck.
And then Fidel Castro got word of this and issued him an honorary Cuban passport.
Really?
So he could travel.
All right, that's an amazing story.
Yeah, Wilfred Burchett.
Wilfred Burchett.
Wowzers. Fucking hell. Well,
they don't teach that in the journalism curriculum at University of Monash, do they?
Who's Wilfred Burchett?
Fucking hell. Yeah. Well, I think that's sort of enough information for everyone today. That's been a lot. We've been back and forth a bit. One thing we can take from this episode is it's not really it's not really a great message, but like doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't seem like we can make a difference. It doesn't feel like we can do anything about it.
Doesn't mean that we shouldn't have high standards for our institutions, though.
And that's what I was about to say. What do you think we can do? Is there anything we can do? From your opinions,
I think staying engaged is a huge one. I think Julian said it himself. Like, people say, "Ask what can I do?" And he said that the lessons or the answer is not that hard. It's like get informed, be engaged, understand how power works. Take the time to understand and not just take for granted the system and the structures that exist around you and presume that they're just here for your benefit or to do right by you. It's about taking the time to understand power, to critique it and the system, and to be engaged with what's going on around you.
Yeah.
I kind of think, I don't like the narrative or the message of hopelessness or powerlessness. I think, those things aren't entirely true, although we may feel that they are.
Yeah.
In our despair at the reality of the world. I forgot what I was going to say then. Thought escapes me.
That's all good.
Well, Branchy, when I had a conversation with you at Corey's gig the other week, I mentioned coming on here doing a rap.
Oh, yes. Have you prepared?
I've got a little gift for the podcast if you're happy for me to perform it for the pod.
So happy. Do you need music?
I do. I brought my Bluetooth speaker with me. I've come prepared. I'm going to get Corey to pull the beat up for me. This is before we rip into it.
Do you want to you can put the beat to the actual Roadcaster if you connect to that, and it'll go into our headphones?
Okay. I don't really know how to do that, but
I'll detach from the Roadcaster, and then if you've got the beat,
just as a bit of a
Bluetooth to put this on.
Yes, Bluetooth, and then search for the Roadcaster Pro. This is incredible.
So look, as a bit of a sort of give a little bit of a summary about the intention of what we're trying to sort of go for.
Yes.
So it's sort of it's half like a birthday pod for the cast, even though it's birthday sort of like thing for the podcast. But I suppose a summary of the journey of the podcast up until this point, how I see it in the cultural space.
I love it,
and just sort of pumping you guys up a little bit as well.
Well,
a little bit of shade thrown here and there, but lighthearted.
Before he does this, I just want to say to everyone, a disclaimer: I had nothing to do with any of these.
That sends an ominous message when Corey's wanting to distance himself from it to begin with. Normally it's the other way around. It's me being like, oh shit, I don't know about that, mate.
No, I only want to distance myself because it's sentimental and sappy.
Oh, that's nice.
And that's not me.
All right.
I can't find Roadcaster coming up in the Bluetooth.
Oh,
I've got Bride Selection Computer.
Oh, okay. Now, it's all right. You could probably connect it to that one. If you connect to that one and put it near your mic when he's thinking, then he can rap to it. But that's very. This is very thoughtful. I like that.
Well, look,
that was a great night as well. Just
reserve judgment until you've heard it. Mate. You might think it's fucking hated and think it's whack. So
I think it's going to be. It's a great way to finish the pod.
So isolated, I can't even connect to a speaker.
And unfortunately, I haven't been able to commit this to memory. So I've got the
Fine.
aid here, but
that's fine.
It's about 3.5 minutes. So
yes.
Did you get this beat on Spotify?
Nah, I got it on YouTube. Sorry, audience viewers, you might have to listen to a 15-second advertisement.
I'll be muted.
Stay with us.
Don't worry. What's the beat again?
What's Love?
Oh yes.
You know the tracks?
Yeah. Well, I'm potentially if it's the one I think it is.
Yeah.
But
I've got a lot of.
Before you do it, actually, because that's how we can finish this episode. Do you guys want to plug anything while you're before we finish?
Yeah, I'm in Melbourne, 26th of August, doing a show there at my beloved Exford Hotel.
Love it.
They can afford bouncers, unlike the previous venue. So if anyone wants to punch on afterwards, just so you know that. And they're good blokes too, and not just because they bashed a comedian that we know. And then I'm in Sydney from about the 14th of September, doing 3 nights over in Chippendale.
Perfect. I love it. I've got nothing. I'm always at Delby's quiz, Paddy Malone's, every Wednesday night. I'm also... I'm actually jumping up at Livid tomorrow night. Last minute call up from Brian Shields, Livid Cafe. The Livid, there's a new little fun room. I think he's going to do it once a month, a bit of fun. So I'm there tomorrow. I think on Friday night I'm hosting another quiz night for another business. So yeah, there's a few things coming up. I think I'm doing Gong next Thursday. You doing Gong next week?
I'm off Monday. I'm doing it this week, and then I'm doing Fremantle this weekend.
Okay.
And then, yeah, mate, I will be...
Yeah, cool. And yeah.
Sorry.
And Robbie, you got anything to plug?
Nah, nothing to plug for me, mate, but watch this space.
Is this the one?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so just put your mic near the...
Do I have to have the headphones on for this? I think it might just be off-putting for me hearing my voice ringing in my ears.
No, you can do what you want, mate. It's all good. As long as you're nice and close
Get
to
that
that.
beautiful mane out for the viewers, mate. Take the headphones off.
Let's take the headphones off. Get the wire.
Yes.
All right.
Holy shit, look at that mane flowing.
Features.
This could be clipped up as well, mate. This could be clipped up. All right.
You ready? This is a hard yarns first.
Put that mic there.
How far into the beat are you? You started again? Fucking Corey, you can't trust him to do anything, mate. All right, here we go. Let's go, hard yarners. Greenest of pastures, meanest hard yarners, Patreoners, it's seamless, believe this. Edition 196, we're back and flexing, stressing this pod's been rigorously road tested, both safe and effective, so let's get hard. Where the hell's Delby? Can anybody tell me? The co-host ghosted, don't know where the bloke is, joking. Brother, tearing up Edinburgh. In lieu for you, we got Corey, Bobby and Branchy. Alarmed? Still having a hard yarn since day one winning. Humble beginnings must be said in jest, started in Branchy shed. No kidding, not the end. Living on starred muffins, upgraded studio, strutting their stuff on Hutton. Lease days numbered, finding a new zone of abundance, extending circumference. So we go to a new home on Angove Solution, improving studio evolution. The truth is elusive, hard yarns is a movement. Tune in, never fear, soothing, it's clear. A light-hearted place for discussion of ideas, unfair to the mainstream media deceivers. Going spare, iron grip, loosen podcast, extend town square fair, building community connection and social capital valuable. Rolling your eyes, two straight privileged white guys starting a podcast. Obnoxious, what's this? It must be toxic, a place to speak your mind and be yourself. It's the new fifth estate, cause the media's a waste of space. 2021, Corey, grateful for a platform to speak out against the mandates. Plenty of topics covered, comedy, fake news, COVID-2, geopolitics, clowning, Mark McGowan, veganism, activism, relationship, health, conspiracy, theories, hypnotism, lessons in civics to astrophysicists. Picture this, exquisite, we get to witness this. Quips escape lips, even covering broken dicks. Inconsiderate, Liam Ellis penis felled. Sitting out a spell, don't know the bloke, but hope he's recovering well. What an insane game. Australian made, crossing Nullarbor plains, running a camel train. John Elliott of Australia, not Lawrence of Arabia. Exclusive membership. Aussie T.S. Eliot, interruption with a pun. Corey story not fun, outdone, undergun, short compared to big pun. allegedly heavenly, kicking lyrical melodies, composer like Mozart. Flows art, aghast, too smart. Bobby Orr flows art, flows charging last bars. I got him on command, setting foot on the path, trepidation awaiting, facing him. It's the hero's journey. Word spree's not worthy, sounds like a furphy. I'm Goggins on this mic, cause you can't hurt me. You serve me, one word unworthy. Got the crazy syntax, relapse and rehab. Is that Andrew Wolf or poor man's Joey Diaz? Seems that we're in the podcast kingdom. Discussion is the mission, never getting hemmed in by the walls of officialdom. Verboten means not permitted or allowed, forbidden or prohibited by, or as if by authority, vivid when I'm spitting. That's the dictionary definition. It's Robert Oppenheimer doing lyrical curls, banner unfurled death, destroyer of worlds. So what's love got to do with it? You see a former sheet metal worker and teacher living their dreams. Thanks for the platform, lyrical destroyer, harshly washed up criminal and family lawyers disarmed on guard, jousting going hard. It's hard yarns. Free Julian Assange.
Yes!
Boys, I forgot my charger.
Oh, that is so good. Oh, fuck.
Thanks for that, mate. I fucking fucked up a couple of lines in there.
No, you did very well.
Getting a little bit carried away and...
Fuck, that was...
I was terrified my phone was going to ring. And
Fuck, incredible. Thank you so much, guys. Delby, you've lost your job as the best rapper on this podcast.
I'll have to get Delby on for a free.
Fuck, yeah. I love that. Yeah, incredible episode. Thanks so much for coming, guys.
Cheers.
Pleasure.
See you, mate.
Cheers, boys.